Yo, what's going on? Coming back at you with another Nofap Semen Retention motivation video. And today I want to talk about why when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention, you develop more control over your emotions. So the first reason why you develop more control over your emotions when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention is because when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention, you're forced to deal with emotions that you were masking, that you were covering up with your fapping habit. I'll speak for myself, and also I think for most people, that a lot of times when we would choose to fap, it's because we would be experiencing something uncomfortable, whether it was conscious or subconscious. A lot of times it's subconscious. There's the addiction to fapping, of course, the addiction to the feeling of fapping. But if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of times it's just that we don't feel good inside, and we don't even want to. We're not even fapping for the feeling necessarily. We don't have necessarily an urge or a craving of fap. It's just that we have something inside ourselves that's causing emotional turbulence. So we'll fap even when we're not even filled with lust in that moment. You see what I mean? So when you take away the fapping, when you take away the excessive addiction to releasing, you're now forced to face those emotions that you were covering up. If that makes sense? You know what I mean? So when you face these emotions, unless we're replacing fapping with something more destructive like drug addiction or something like this, we're going to have the tendency to find better outlets, to find more healthy ways of coping with our emotions, if that makes sense. So that's the first reason why you're going to develop more emotional mastery when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention. Another reason why you develop more control over your emotions when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention is because you're forced to resist lust. You're forced to resist urges. You're forced to resist things that lead to fapping. And I know in a previous video I was preaching a lot about preventing urges versus resisting urges. But even as much as we prevent urges from occurring, we're always going to be resisting lust to a certain degree, whether that's a full-blown urge or whether it's just like our lust meter goes up a little bit and we gotta like have that dissipate. We gotta resist that before it goes and turns into a full-blown urge. You know what I'm saying? So that's the second reason, because we're gonna be resisting these emotions, resisting these feelings of lust that would lead us to fap, and that gives the person more emotional control, more emotional mastery when you're able to experience the feeling of being of having lust, but you're not going to act upon it. You see what I mean? So that's going to make you more adept at dealing with feelings that come up. We're dealing with Nofap, but it applies to other areas of our life. Once we master the feelings that come up on Nofap, it's going to apply to other feelings in different situations and give us more emotional control in those situations. So another reason, and this is a really big reason, why Nofap and Semen Retention give you more emotional mastery. I don't like to talk about women a lot on this channel, but the thing is, when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention, I'll put it like this, like women just can't really get under your skin in the same way as they would be able to in certain situations when you were a fapper or when you were addicted to releasing. So if you're on Nofap or you're on Semen Retention, you're going to notice that women are definitely not going to be able to affect you in the same type of way. Because the thing about it is, when you're on Nofap, you no longer have to release to be happy. So you, by extension, no longer need a woman to be happy. So if a woman chooses to go, if they come and they go, it's not going to affect you in the same type of way. It's not going to make you upset in the same type of way. Not saying that it's everyone gets upset in general, but I'm saying, say a woman was able to get you in your emotions before, was able to make you upset before, deal with that same woman a year into Nofap and Semen Retention. She's not going to be able to get under your skin in the same type of way. And I've actually experienced this in my life personally. There's been a woman that's been in my life for about like 15 years, in and out, you know what I mean? Before I was on Nofap, before I was on this current Nofap streak of over 400 days of Nofap and Semen Retention, you know, this is like kind of like a wild girl, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't ever really get her to, you know, I don't like to talk all about like all getting them to submit and all this and that. That's not really what I'm trying to get to on this channel. But this woman would definitely, I would allow her to get under my skin when I was not on Nofap. Now, 400 days later, you know, she did kind of say some things to me that would have got me in my emotions before, but 400 days later, it doesn't faze me at all. Personally, I can attest to women cannot get under my skin in the same type of way that they used to be able to. So that's one of the huge benefits of Nofap and Semen Retention. So say you get rejected by a woman, and that woman in the past was able to make you upset by rejecting you. Not saying you should ever get upset in general, you shouldn't. But say that woman was able to make you upset when you're on Nofap and Semen Retention, she's not going to be able to make you upset because you don't need to release, and by extension, you don't need her. I'm just saying, women play a very amazing role in life, but let's face it, one of the main reasons we love women in our life is because they bring us great pleasure, they're beautiful, and when we don't need that physical release from them, they're no longer able to phase us in the same type of way that they would be able to if we're not on Nofap and Semen Retention. Because the thing about it is, fappers, when you are a fapper, you need to release to be happy. I'm just putting it straight out there. When you are addicted to pornography, when you are addicted to fapping, you need to release to be happy. And if you don't release, you're gonna not be happy. You're gonna have uncomfortable emotions. You're not gonna be having a good time if you can't release. When you're addicted to releasing in any type of way, whether say you're on Nofap, but you're addicted to escorts, you're addicted to whatever, you need to release, then hey, women you need women because you need to release. When you don't need to release, you just don't need women. So if they choose to reject you, if they come and go, it just doesn't matter. So that's my experience. So changing gears a little bit, one of the main reasons why you're going to develop emotional mastery on Nofap and Semen Retention is because you're no longer draining your dopamine with all this fapping. So that means that you're going to have dopamine available each day to give you that steady dopamine drip throughout the day to create a sense of well-being, to create a sense of happiness. I used to have this friend, he was a brother of one of my good friends, and he used to say that he had a theory that we each have a certain amount of happiness chemical in our brain, and if we choose to use it with things like drugs, we're literally taking away from the happiness of tomorrow. And I could say the exact same thing with fapping. You see what I mean? When you choose to fap, when you choose to drain your dopamine in this way, you're taking away from the happiness of tomorrow. So when you stop fapping, you are creating more happiness for the next day. You are creating more dopamine and endorphins for the next day. You're gonna be happier on Nofap and Semen Retention because you're not draining your dopamine centers so then you have more available during the day to make you happy. Nofap and semen retention just in general, being on nofap and semen retention, I am much happier. Whether you want to break that down into dopamine, endorphins, or just in general, or the retention of the life force, I'm just happier. And being happy, I have more control over my emotions. You see what I mean? So, having control over our emotions, you have to understand that fapping creates social anxiety. I've probably been through this a bunch of times in this channel, but when you stop fapping, you no longer are going to have social anxiety. You're going to build confidence. And as a result of this, you're going to have more control over your emotions. You know, when you are fapping every day and you go outside and you just feel like a raw piece of meat, like you just feel like a piece of sushi, just like just the wind blowing against you makes you feel uncomfortable. You know, your emotions are just going to be all over the place. When you have social anxiety in general, your emotions are all over the place. So when you quit fapping, you now are able to be without social anxiety. You're able to go outside with confidence, and you're going to have more control over your emotions as a result of not having social anxiety. Another reason, we're just going to keep them going. Nofap and semen retention, it forces you to, let me say this, nofap and semen retention is a mental game. It's a mental and emotional game. It requires you to deal with your emotions and deal with your whatever comes up in order to succeed. Mentally and emotionally, you have to face whatever comes up mentally and emotionally in order to continue to stay on your streak. In order to find success in nofap and semen retention, you're going to have mastery over your emotions, and by extension, succeeding at something that forces you to have mastery over your emotions. When you succeed, you're gonna have mastery over your emotions. You see what I mean? And like I said, this emotional mastery, this emotional stability, it's going to transfer over to every part of your life. It's going to transfer over to your work. It's going to transfer over to interpersonal relationships. If you're with a woman, it's going to transfer over to her not being able to get under your skin. And I'd like to say that we're talking about emotional, being more emotionally stable. As a result of nofap and semen retention, I want to make a quick disclaimer. I'm not by any means saying that you're not going to have negative emotions, that you're not going to have times where things get under your skin. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, when you've been on nofap and semen retention, if you want, for long enough, you are going to notice that you are more emotionally stable. You're a lot calmer. Things can't faze you in the same way. Be it your boss, a guy in the street, a woman, losing a bunch of money in the stock market, it doesn't affect you in the same type of way. It just doesn't. And before we close up this video, I just want to say that in the beginning, you're going to probably experience some negative emotions. You're going to experience sexual frustration, probably. You might even experience post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which is when you discontinue using a drug, you go through withdrawal. The same type of thing can happen when you discontinue pornography and fapping and excessive releasing. When you discontinue these things, it can create what's known as the flatline. So the flatline unlike drugs, it doesn't have to happen exactly when you stop. No, when you stop fapping, it can happen 20 days later. It can happen 2 months later, and it doesn't have to happen at all. Me personally, I have not experienced any flatline whatsoever. I've been on Nofap and Semen Retention over 400 days. So you don't have to experience these things. But, you know, I just wanted to give you this disclaimer so that you know that in the beginning, things can be rough. But over time, you know, things are going to even out. It's going to pay off. It's worth it. Nofap is worth it. If you want to do semen retention, it's worth it. You're going to find success. You're going to find happiness on this path. So just want to say I love all y'all. If you comment, I'm going to respond. I appreciate y'all checking out the video, and I'm going to see you again soon. All right, take care now.